Okay, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning if you're in the Mountain or West time zone, Pacific time zone. Today we're going to talk about inventory reports. If you have any questions during the presentation, you have a Q&A box at the top of your toolbar. You can go ahead and put questions in there. If you don't see a Q&A, just put your questions in chat. At the end of the presentation, we will have a Q&A. My name is Gina Thomas. I'm the training manager at C&K Systems and your hostess for Training Bites, a digestible approach to counterpoint training. And of course, joining me today is Marty Katz. He's a project lead here at C&K Systems, and he'll be on hand to help answer questions as well.
Good afternoon or morning, as the case may be.
Man, we're spanning many time zones at this hour. Okay, there are a lot of reports in Counterpoint, and particularly inventory reports. There are 28 reports. And so what report shows what? And what report should you run? Depends on your needs. And what's the difference between a history report and a journal report? So we're going to talk about reports today. I'm going to, in specifically, focus on the first 15 because there isn't a way I can cover 23 reports in this time period. But the reports I'm not going to cover are just typically lists. So the reports I am going to show you have some type of value to them, be it sales or quantity. We're also going to look at merchandise analysis, which is the report that gives you a little bit control in the designing of the report. None of the other ones really give you a lot of control, but merchandise analysis will give you a little control. And then we'll look at the difference between history and journal. If you're at my webinar last month, you know the big difference between the two is the ability to filter. So I'm not going to explain every statement or report on this slide. What I am going to do is pause so that when you get your recording, you can come back and refer back to these next 3 slides. But it just kind of gives you a one-liner statement, what each report does. And outside of the items report, well, even that will give you some values. But all of these reports are going to give you some type of value, whether it's an on-hand value, price, cost, or even sales. Okay, here's the next slide. I'm just going to pause that. Again, these 6 reports are going to give you some type of values, current values and past values. And you can even have a KPI report, which is fancy for key product indicator. And then the last 6 I'm going to look at, again, value on these reports, whether it's sales values, current retail, current cost, aging, how old your products are. And then for those of you that are multi-store, the transfer status report will show you transfer outs that have been done and maybe transfer ins that haven't been completed, which should be of interest to you. Because everyone's good at doing a transfer out, but not the transfer ins. And we'll spend a little bit of time on the merchandise analysis report because it will show you so much more than just sales or just on hand. On this report, you can look at your sales and on hand side by side, even put your on orders, your received, any data type, including sales. Whereas in a sales analysis report, you can only look at sales, but merchandise analysis, you can look at much more. And I'll show you how to design one. Okay, and then journals versus history. So you can see in this screenshot here, I have 3 history reports and 3 journal reports. They're identical reports, but the history report will let you filter for date ranges. Journal reports are event driven. Every time you post, there's an event. Okay, so let's go into the software. So I'm going to go to inventory and reports. And again, there's 28. I'm going to focus on these 5, the next 5, and then the next 5. These reports down here are basically just list involving your price rules, your bills of material, your sales kits. So these reports down here, these 5, 10, these 13 reports, they don't give you sales values or on-hand values. It's just going to tell you what your price rules are, what items apply. Same with sales kits and your bills of material. Okay, so let's start with the items report. This is a really simple report. There's a couple ways to run it. You can use this report drop-down and see a summarized version. You can pick how it orders itself. By default, it's going to put everything in item number order. Down here is a filter. And when I preview this, I'll make this a little bit larger. Okay, so it's a very simple report. Item description, one of the very few reports that actually shows you a vendor item number, and one of the very few reports that shows you unit cost, pure last cost, and your unit price, your quantity on hand, and whether it's inactive, active, or discontinued. With a lot of these reports here in inventory, you have choices on this report dropdown. Like I chose summary, but I could choose detail just to see, how it looks. So I'll just preview it. And what's different is, in addition to descriptions and on hand, I can now see categories, subcategories. You can see that over here. I can also see MSRP if I'm using it, any quantities on back orders, and these are customer back orders, customer orders, layaways, and special orders, plus you're on hand and you're on order with a vendor. A basic and fundamental about any report is that you may make some decisions on a report over and over and over because that's the way you like to see the report. For example, if I go to inventory analysis, there's a lot of different ways to run this report. We can analyze by item, or we can have a summarized report by category, or a super summarized category report. But let's say I like running this by item, and then my next choice is, well, what do I want to see in the analysis? Do I want to see on hand values, or do I want to see sales values? Now, if I pick on hand values, you'll notice that my dates are grayed out because on hand is always at this moment in time. Always at this moment in time, anytime you see on hand. Now, if I choose a sales value, then I get a date range. This print top 10 is a default. I'm going to change it to all. This report will not break out locations on the same report. So we either pick one location, but if you pick all locations, all the numbers will be added together for both stores, or more if you have more. When it comes to dates, I'm a big fan of dynamic dates. So month to date, season to date, week to date, year to date. If you save a report with a dynamic date, then that report date will roll with your computer calendar. But if I came in here and did a custom date and saved this report, then anytime I load the report, it would always be this custom date. So I like month to date the best. Then if you have gridded items, you can choose to see cell detail or not in a grid view or in a list view. This item tab is to filter. It can be customized if you need to customize it to search for something else. So I'm going to go ahead and preview this report. I'm going to go ahead and make it larger so you can see. So you can see on this report, we have an item, we have a description, and on hand and sold. And that sold is only showing because I picked that value from the drop down to show me sales. I can see committed quantities, anything on a PO, the extended retail value and extended sales value. This is retail value for the on hand. Profit expressed as dollars and percentages, and the inventory value. Anytime you see something like inventory value or cost, not last cost, cost, it typically means average cost, not your last cost. Then you can see there's even a weeks on hand Based on the rate of sales in that date range, you have enough product to last you 13 weeks with your one that's on hand. Or I'm sorry, your 16 that's on hand. So I like this report. And, by default, when I come in here, it is set to print inventory value. It's set to, do a different date range, but I want to keep this so I don't have to change these drop downs. So any report where you make choices and you want to save those choices, options, save parameters, inventory, analysis, sales. Call it whatever you like. I like to copy the descriptions or the report name down to the descriptions. It just looks prettier when you go to select the report. So now that I've saved it, I'm going to exit. So now when I go back and I go to options and I load parameters, here's my inventory analysis. And had I not put a description, this would be blank and I'd have to remind myself to look over here. So, I mean, you don't have to put in a description. I just think it makes it easier to spot your reports when you go to load the parameters. So then when I load this, everything is selected for me. The inventory history report is an auditing report. So I use this report when someone says, I don't understand how my on-hand values got to be this value or how cost got to be this value. So I'll get this report. I'll use this drop down. I'll arrange it by transaction date so everything's in chronological order. I'll enable detail so I can see every transaction that affected the item up or down. And then I'm going to use a filter. I would never just click on preview without filtering for an item here, because if you see every item in your inventory, it's quite overwhelming. So usually I just put an item that I have a curious question about. Now, if I have a question about more than one item, after I figure out what's wrong with one, I'll probably know what's wrong with the other ones, or I can just, run it for each one. And I also focus on a location where I see the problem. And then if you've had the item for, 10 or 20 years, you might want to filter for a transaction date range, maybe since your last inventory. So I'm just going to preview that. I don't have a lot of history on this item. So let me make this a little bit bigger. Well, not quite that big. Let's go a little bit smaller. So you can see in the left-hand column, it's showing you the item number. It's showing you every transaction that affected the item. Physical count, receiving, sales and returns. Here you can see the document number in case you want to go look it up. Here are the quantities. Positive quantities are adding to the inventory. Negative quantities are taking away from the inventory. On physical count, the number you see here is an adjustment number. It's not the count at the time of the physical inventory. So for example, when I did the inventory for this item, maybe I had 5 on hand and I counted 5. So when I posted the inventory, there was nothing to adjust. That's why this is a 0. Then you can see your extended retail, your unit cost, and your extended cost, again, averages. Okay, the inventory status report is a nice report because you can actually get items with a location breakdown. So if I use this drop down, these 3 reports will not give me a location breakdown. So if you're a single store, you can stick to those. But if you have more than one store, you can get a location breakdown for your items by selecting one of these 3, item, vendor, or category. And then of course you can change the order by, maybe you want it printing in category order, which is fine. And then down here at the bottom, if you have gridded items, you can use this drop down here and tell Counterpoint you want to see a list of your colors and sizes. And then down here, you can say, well, some additional information I'd like to see is either last received, sold, or counted, or maybe the inventory value and the stock status. The stock status is whether or not you're over or under your minimums if you're using min-max. Okay, so I'll just leave it at last received, sold, and counted. These are filters, so if you don't want to see everything, you could filter for something. So I'm just going to go ahead and preview. And I'm just going to make this larger. So this is a flat item. Let me find here. Here's a flat item. You can see the item number, the location, the average unit cost, current on hand, on PO, your min, max, and then your PO numbers if you have a PO number, last received, last sold, last counted. And then for your gridded items, here on this men's polo, for the style at my east, there are 15. So I'm sorry, 15 is the average unit cost. At my east as a style, I have 10. At my main, I have I have 4. And then down below here, it just gives you the breakdown at each location, color, and size. So you can do, a little analysis with your gridded items. The consolidated grid report is just like it sounds. It's super consolidated. It only does look at grids. So by super consolidated, I mean there isn't an item feature in here to look at the grid by item. It's either going to be by category or vendor or subcategory and vendor category. If I just do category, I can say what I want to print on the report here. Maybe I want to see quantity sold, quantity on hand, weeks in period, weeks on hand. Put in my date range. Again, I like dynamic dates. If I choose a location, that's fine. If I do all locations, it means combine all my stores together in these values. And I'm going to uncheck dollar. And I'll make this just a little bit bigger. So this is what I mean about super consolidated. So what Counterpoint's showing me here is, yeah, you have this style called men's polo. You have one called sports coat. You have one called 100% cotton. And as a style, here are the values: sold, cost, profit, on hand. Then down here, these colors are not shared with all of these. So my men's polo, I just happen to know I only carry black, blue, and navy, but my sports coat, I carry in all the colors. And so the grid is just telling you, in general, for this color, here's how many you sold on hand, weeks in period, and weeks on hand, based on your rate of sales that was specified on the parameters. So super consolidated. The inventory snapshot, I like this one because it will break down your locations. So if I do click on all locations, let me use this drop down first. This item summary is not going to give me a location breakdown. It would have to be item location detail or location and item detail. So you can see the location in the items or the item in all the locations. How do I want it to print? By location is really your first choice. Of course, my dynamic date range. This is my filter. If I don't want to see everything, I'm going to filter. So now I'll just preview this. So I did location and item detail on this one. So here's my east. Oh, let me make that bigger. I know that's really hard to see when I don't. So at my east, item, description, inventory value, quantity on hand, quantity on PO, sold, percent sold, weeks on hand. Let's go to one that actually has some weeks on hand. So here, my lavender lotion, the value is $75. I have 6 on hand based on my rate of sales in the date range I specified. I have enough inventory to last me 16 weeks. So this is pretty handy, making sure you have enough merchandise. The dates, by the way, is whatever I put here. The bigger the date range, the smaller the weeks on hand will get because you're analyzing more sales in a time frame. Now, if I do it the other way, again, multi-store, then I see the item. Here's the item, here's a location, here's location, here's location, value on hand, on purchase order, sold, percent, weeks on hand. So you might want to come in and just, play around with the different options on some of these reports to see what you like best. The inventory availability, the claim to fame here is it can actually print on a receipt printer. Maybe you're at the East location and you want to see what the main has on hand for a customer, which you can actually do through point of sale. You can zoom in on an item and see the availability of a single item. But this one will give you all items. Again, if I don't filter, I'm going to see everything. Notice my drop down. I'm going to choose this report. This is a full-blown 8.5 by 11 report. This is what it looks like. So again, item description, how many you have available, category, subcategory, and the vendor, not the vendor item number, but the vendor itself. And then you can see down here in my gridded items, I can see how many red, small, blue, medium, sandstone. So that's just telling me I'm available. Now, if I want to print this on a receipt printer, certainly I would probably filter for something because that paper for receipt printer is really expensive. So maybe I just want to check out the cookware at the East because I'm all out. Maybe they need to send me some. So you can see here, it's designed for a 40 column printer. Okay, and then if you have a TMT88, then you use this drop down and choose that. You know who you are. Okay, merchandise analysis, my favorite, because these reports are basically what you see is what you get, except for some decisions you can make with drop downs. But a merchandise analysis report gives you a little more control on the information that's being returned. Now, by default, it is going to print, a category name or an item number and an item description, but it's the quantitative values that you'll have control over. So the decisions you make here in a merchandise analysis, do you want something summarized? Then analyzed by group. You want something super granular? Then analyzed by item. Print top 10 as a default. I usually choose all here because I want to see everything. Group by. Now, this group by is pretty cool because you can say, well, I want to analyze my items. Maybe they're sales, maybe they're on hand, but I want them grouped by category. This is not possible in a sales analysis report. You can do sales by item, or you can do sales by category, but you can't see the category and then the items below it. Merchandise analysis will let you see that. Again, I'm going to specify
Please hold while I try to connect you.
and again, I could specify a dynamic date. I can mute somebody who's not muted. Okay, all locations mean all the numbers are going to get lumped together. If you have location groups, so you have multiple stores, some belong to group 1, group 2, then you can pick a group, or you can pick a specific location. I'm going to do all locations, and I'm going to say show location detail, and I'm going to uncheck my dollar rounding. Now, when I go to select columns, every available column has to do with numbers or money. That's it. But you don't see everything that's available. So if you come down here to show all columns, then you have everything that's available. Now by default, you can see I just have sales values here. So we'll just run this report with sales values and then I'll come back and change it. The item and inventory tabs are filters. So if you don't want to see everything, make sure you filter. So here you can see, I'm going to make it bigger so you can see, right? So here's an item, here's a description, here's the location where it's at, the number of transactions that were created in this date range, 38 days, how many were sold, my sales, looks like that was a return, cost of sales and profit. Let's go down to some real items. Here my tumbler. Again, number of transactions, quantity sold, and sales. Okay, but maybe I want to see sales and on hand side by side because that, just makes more sense to me. I'm selling it. Do I have enough on hand? Do I need to order more? So I'm going to just get rid of some of these here. Okay. Notice down here, I can have up to 10 columns. I usually stick to 7 or 8 because 7 or 8 fit nicely, 8.5 across. Okay, so now I want quantity on hand. There's quantity on hand. The value quantity on hand means right now at this moment in time. So quantity on hand does not care about this date range. The same is true for quantity on purchase orders. Quantity on purchase orders does not care about this date range. It's looking at all your open POs, including POs that might be 3 or 4 or 5 years old that are still open. So, I'm always saying keep your PO module clean, keep your PO module clean, cancel anything that's obsolete. Otherwise, they're going to show up on this report if you have quantity on purchase orders. And it might be kind of misleading. So we'll just go ahead and look at this. So I'll make it bigger again. Let's come down here to some like real items instead of my test items. Okay, so here my men's polo. You can see at the east and the main how many I sold in this date range and my current on hand and even how many are on an open PO. Now, there is a way to have on hand pay attention to the date range, not the POs though, but on hand. So when I did show all columns, I got a value called quantity beginning balance and quantity ending balance. And you also have those same values for cost. Cost beginning, cost ending. The same with retail. It'll be retail on hand or retail beginning right there or retail ending. So if it says beginning or ending, it's going to pay attention to this date range. So let's say I do 1 to 131. By the way, I'm just using my minus sign to go backwards here. And then I'm actually going to add quantity on hand as well. Okay, so quantity beginning balance, and I'm just going to get rid of all this sales stuff, just so it's nice and clean. Quantity beginning balance is going to be as of this date. Quantity ending balance will be as of this date. Quantity on hand will be today. So we'll just go ahead and preview. And let me make this bigger. So as of the first of the year, this was my on hand. As of the 31st, this was my on hand. This is my on hand today, this moment in time. And for those of you that know what a KPI is and work with KPIs, that's things like maybe your freshness rate, your gross margin return on investment. They're all in here. There's also a couple values for sell-through and even turns, quantity, cost, and retail. So you can add all those to your merchandise analysis report. So lots of flexibility there. The retail value report is just what it sounds like. The retail value of my inventory, but this one will look to date ranges that you have here for your on hands. So when I come in here, maybe I just want to see it by group, real summarized. Maybe I want it real granular by item. Maybe I want to see everything. Maybe I want it grouped by vendor or category. I have my dynamic date here. I can do all locations, location group specific, or I can break out the location detail. These are my filters. And we'll make that a little bit bigger. Okay, so this was a lot of negatives in my inventory. Oh, here we go. Here's a good one. This was the beginning value, the beginning quantity of the item. These are receivings, adjustments, transfers, which we had none. And then you can see there's a price one, which is your retail, the markup percentage, a regular price if you're using it. And you can see for the East, we see retail, cost, units. So retail cost unit. So this value, beginning values, the retail value, cost is average cost, units is your on hand. See if we have a better example. Here's one. The value retail wise for this item at my east. Here's the cost, here are the units. So that's the retail value. Historical valuation is kind of what it sounds like. Your inventory values in the past. So you can come down here to this valuation date, for example, and say, what was my inventory value at the end of December? It's February and I just want to know what I ended the year with. Again, make it granular or broad, group it somehow. I like to see all, but you can just look at your top or bottom. Choose how you want your locations to show. I'm just going to see the main location right now, and then I'll preview. Okay, so here's the value of my inventory as of the end of the year. You can see my quantity on hand as of December 31st. That was, I did not mean to do that. Come on back here. I clicked on something. Okay, so as of December 31st, I had 128, which was 54% of my total inventory just in food items. Here's my average cost, 2% of my total cost, my retail value. So this category is 3% of my retail value. The inventory grid overview report is just for grids. So for those of you that sell gridded items, not a lot of decisions to make here, except a date range. Maybe if you don't like dollar rounding, you can check it. I'm going to uncheck the details for now, and we'll just look at one. This is just one of my gridded items, just so it's a little easier to read. So here's a summary of the style, how many sold as a style, the retail sales, the average cost it cost to sell, my current quantity on hand for the style, and my extended price for the style and extended cost. So this is a unit cost. Okay, then you see the colors on hand, on PO, quantity available, min max, extended cost, sold, and sales. Quantity sold is units, sales is dollars. Now there's another switch I can add to this called detail, which kind of makes the grid look a little easier to read than this, because I think that's a little difficult. So if I close out of here and I come to parameters and I enable details, I like how the details option just kind of combines my cells together. So, as a whole, all my blue smalls, as a whole, all my blue mediums. So I like that a lot. If you have very large grids, the consolidated grid report and the inventory grid overview might print a little funny, but I'm talking if you have like 30 dimensions to a grid, which, I know of some people that do, but it will make the report, want to wrap or print on two side-by-side pages. So if you see that behavior, it's not unusual. They're just extremely large grids. The sell-through rate, like the retail value report will look at values on hand values in the past, depending on the date range that you set. So if I go to the sell through, here's my date range, and I can even set this to, let's say, the beginning of the month if I want to. And then here I can order it by some of these KPIs. I'm going to just do the sell through. And then if I want to see gridded items, I can see them in a standard order or a sort order. And we'll just go ahead and preview. So this is my sell-through report. I'm going to make this larger. So you can see here from my lavender lotion, at the beginning of the year, as of 110, this is how many I had on hand, how many sales I had in this date range, no returns. This other column speaks to maybe receiving, maybe an adjustment, maybe a transfer. So there aren't separate columns that represent receiving, transfers, and adjustments. They're all just grouped together. Hey, 3 other things affected the inventory. So as of February 1st, I had 6 on hand. And then you can see my gross margin return on investment, my turns, and my sell-through percent. And you can see the same values for my gridded items as a style and at the color and size level. For those of you that do use serial numbers, there's 3 different lists in here. You can get a list of all your items and the serial numbers associated with those items. I only have 2. You can get a list of your customers that bought serialized items. Maybe there's a recall or something. So you would know to call those customers if they have these particular serial numbers that you're looking for. Or you can do it by vendor. Show me all the vendor item numbers and all the serial numbers associated with each vendor. The 6-week item history report, I think, there's just a lot going on in this report, a lot of information, but it will show you sold, receiving, based on this date and working backwards 6 weeks. You have to really look hard to pay attention to this report. I even get confused sometimes. So here's the item, here's the description, this is the vendor, category, subcategory, regular price, markup, item price 1. Down here, you see 26-week receiving. So here's your first received. Here's your received here. Under here's your current quantity on hand, on order. Then here are your sales for 6 weeks. And then your 26-week performance. And you can see it's breaking out the locations as well. So a lot going on that report. Then there's a 12-month report. This is just going to show sales for 12 months. So start with this date and work its way backwards. Again, you have filters if you care to use them. You can show the brief or the full. The full just has more detail. Gives you more to look at, right? Your locations get broken out. So you can see there's item, description, vendor, category, regular price, price 1, and then everything below it is a sales value. Here's sales for March, April, May, June. I get this request a lot with sales analysis. People kind of want this style of report where they see side by side, month, month, month. So this would be the report for you because it's not possible in sales analysis by group to have 12 date ranges or 12 months worth of data on one report. The valuation report is the value of your inventory right now at this moment in time. And again, there's a detail and a summary. I'm just going to run the summaries because they're easier to look at. I'm going to preview it, make this larger. Okay, so on the value at this moment in time, you see the item, the description, how many on hand, the average cost, you see your last cost, and your retail. Or you can run the detailed version. So it just puts more on the report. And it's breaking out, again, our locations, quantity on hand at this moment, price, average unit cost, last cost, average cost, extended, and retail extended. So valuation, this moment in time. Inventory aging, I like to see if I've had goods sitting around on the floor for a long time. Now, it doesn't show you sales. It'll just show you how old the merchandise is based on the last maybe receiving or adjustment. Again, I can filter for a certain item or a certain category. We'll just go ahead and preview. So you can see here, I've had this item with this average cost. The on hand right now, as of today, is this. And then you can see that this is kind of an old item. I still have 7 on hand, and some of those might be as old as 204 days. Time for a markdown, I think. Or maybe ship them to my main because my main has none. And it's just sitting around here at this location. Same with my storage. They're kind of just sitting around. Maybe I need to ship everything to the main. The transfer status report, if you're doing store-to-store transfers, this is a really good report. You know how people are, the transfer out gets done, the merchandise arrives at the destination, and nobody thinks to do a transfer in. So you kind of keep tabs on it. If you come to this transfer tab, you can even say, just show me all my open transfers or all my completed ones. I'm just going to look at open ones for now. And again, you can filter down for categories, items, whatever you like. And let me make that a little bit bigger. So this is what I would pay attention to. Here's 10 that were transferred out. One was received at the destination, but there's still 9 expected. So then maybe we need to talk to the destination or the source, call the main and find out what the holdup is, or talk to the east and see if they actually did the transfer for the remaining 9. Okay. This committed report is just a list of your committed items. You can see committed through a zoom at the item level or through a report at the item level, but this will show you all your items. So if I click on committed, and I'm just going to preview it, I'm not going to filter for anything. I'll make this a little bit bigger. Again, if you're multi-store, this is going to be a handy report to track transfer ins that have not been done. So if you see something in the transfer in column, it means an out was done, but the corresponding in has not yet been done. So this transfer was from the main to the east. So I'd probably call the east and find out what's going on. Did you get the merchandise? If so, do your transfer in. And again, the rest of these are just a list of my price rules. There's no sales values, no on-hand values, just a list of, my item price list, prices report, customer price list, markdowns. Min-max advice, though, does do something. For those of you that like using reorder points, this report will tell you what your reorder points should be based on your sales in this date range. And then, of course, you want to give the parameter some instructions. I don't want more than 5 in stock or less than 5 in stock. Never want to have more than 7. My vendor, it usually takes them 14 days to get me merchandise. And so then when you preview, make this bigger, you can see my old min-max, but based on my rate of sales in this date range, pretty slow. Counterpoint thinks I ought to lower my reorder points. And the beauty about this, if you use it, is that after you look at the report, you can just click on apply and Counterpoint will write those min-max values, the new ones, to your item records. And then you can leverage that in purchasing to purchase things that have fallen below the min. And another thing I like about this is it's not unforgiving, like posting is so unforgiving. This is not. Let's say I ran it for this date range or analyzed for these sales, and I said, oh, that was wrong. I really meant to do it for the month of December. And you just come back here and change it. So I'll just go back to December, and then I can preview it, see the new suggestions based on my sales in December, and then just have Counterpoint write those values back. So very forgiving. You can do it over and over and over if you like. Journals and history. So under inventory reports, history, adjustments, physical count, quick assembly, quick transfers. Okay, there's 6 reports here. If I go to journals, it's the same 6 reports. They're named a little bit differently, but it's the same reports. So here's the big difference. If I go to a history report and I look at my adjustments, and anytime I use a history report, I always filter for something. In this case, I usually filter for date ranges. So I want to see my adjustments year to date. So when I click on this, here are my adjustments year to date. And that's the beauty of a history report. You have that flexibility. Show me a range. A journal is event driven. If you ever watch posting, and most people don't even notice this, but at the end of posting, you get a pop-up that says event number XXXXX, right? That's what the journals look to. They look to that event number that you see at the end of posting. So when I go to inventory adjustment journal, there's no filter here. The only thing I can do is come into this lookup and select an event. And I'm the type of person that likes to post at the document level. So every time I do an inventory adjustment and I post, it creates an event. So if I want to look at all these adjustments, I'm going to look at them one at a time. So that's the difference between history and journals. You just get a little more flexibility with history. All right, well, with that being said, let's go back to the PowerPoint presentation. And from the current slide. So hopefully this presentation, you learned a little bit, in a nutshell, the data those first 15 reports will return. You understand that you can arrange those reports a little bit differently by using report and option dropdowns. So get in and play with them, see what you like the best. Also remember, if you like something, once you've used a dropdown, go down to options and save the parameters. And then for those of you that want a little more control in the quantitative values that are being returned, designing a merchandise analysis report is the way to go. And of course, the difference between history and journals. On Friday, you'll get a link to the recording. There will also be a survey attached. It's a happy face, sad face type of affair. Feel free to share your feedback, give me topic suggestions. If you want to fill out the survey today, go to our website, www.cksystem.com/training bite survey. You can also remain anonymous if you like, but if you do put your name on it and you had like a question, I will respond to you. Okay, next month, continuing our series of reports, we're going to round out the quarter on March the 7th with sales history reports. These are reports that strictly look at sales. They don't look at on hand, they don't look at on order, they strictly look at sales. We'll also look at the sales analysis by group. This is like merchandise analysis by group. You have some control in the quantitative values that are returned. And then we'll just look at some standard loss prevention reports that you should be running on a regular basis. Your returns, your voids, price overrides. So make sure you join me next month. If you want custom training tailored to your business, your data, give me a call. It's the main number, extension 3, or my extension's 413, or you can email training@cksystem.com. Okay, let's check the Q&A, Marty.
Okie dokie. I remembered to unmute myself this time.
Yay.
Okay, there's nothing in Q&A, but in the chat, we did have a question from Rafa. It seems to be that when you go to that min-max advice report, it pricks up a couple people's ears. So he had a question about the min-max advice report, and I'll go ahead and read it. We do adjust a min-max setting to create a purchase order. Do you know if it accounts for items coming in sleeves of 6 or 12? Let's say an item comes in a package of 6. Will min-max be set as a multiple of 6?
It
And so,
depends, right? Don't you
well, I
think?
don't think that min-max does pay attention, does it?
No, it does not,
Okay.
unless your main stocking unit is a sleeve, which we
So,
don't recommend.
right. So I
We
did
don't
answer him
recommend.
back. I just answered him at the time. I said, we'll be doing purchasing in a month or so. Is that a true?
Actually, I think it's not next month, but in May.
Yeah,
Let me,
that's a month or so.
yeah, you're right, but I don't want to lie, so I'm just going to take a look real quick, and I
Okay.
shall let you know, because it's
And I
not purchasing, it is actually customer specific purchasing that we're going to be doing.
okay.
The
So
whole
anyway,
cycle of, the customer places the order,
yeah.
you generate that entire cycle.
Yeah. So the other thing, so I did continue on and I said, however, if you have a purchasing unit set up, I said, first of all, that min-max is by stocking unit. And then
Yes,
if you set up a purchasing unit of 6 or 12 and in the item's vendor item record, purchasing will make the adjustment with the right settings.
correct,
So you can tell purchasing to say round up to the nearest multiple.
correct. And if you don't know what Marty's talking about, log a support ticket, ask for me, and I will
Mm-hmm.
even show it to you because it's a pretty cool feature that
Mm-hmm.
at the item level, you can say, you know, order in increments of X or order, at least this many. So yeah, it's a pretty nice feature. And it's also where you specify the preferred purchasing unit. So you may sell it by the each, but you purchase it by the 6-pack, and you, of course, pay your vendor by the 6-pack. So in that section of the item record, it's actually vendor items, we can specify, look, we buy it by the 6-pack, so that when you go to do a purchasing document, it's the 6-pack that's suggested. But at the end of the day, it all breaks down to an each. So if you're receiving a 6-pack, you have 6 eaches on hand. Everything breaks down to an each. Okay, that's a good question, Rafa. Thank you.
All right,
Okay.
and that was it that I saw. Go back to Q&A, go back to chat. Yeah, I don't see nothing, Gina.
Oh, I don't either. Okay,
All
well,
right.
must have been thorough. Okay, everyone, thank you for your time. Come see us again next month, March the 7th, 10 and 1 Eastern Time.